What's happening, guys? Jumping on today to talk a little bit about my experience with the 75 Hard Challenge. If you don't know what the 75 Hard Challenge is, it is a 75-day challenge set by Andy Friscella of First Form Nutrition and the MFCEO podcast, which is where I first heard the challenge. There are many different ways to complete this challenge. Some feature additional things, some are more like later stages that you'd complete after the initial 75 days. But how I completed the challenge was these 5 points. Point number 1, 4 liters of water every day. Point number 2, a progress picture every day. Point number 3, 10 pages of non-fiction reading daily. Point number 4, 2 45-minute workouts, 90 minutes of exercise, at least 45 minutes of that 90 has to be outdoor. Point number 5, following some sort of meal plan, diet, / structured eating. All right. So first off, how did I find it? I really enjoyed this challenge. I found it to be quite a good test of both mental and physical sort of endurance. As quite an active person and competitive athlete with a good sort of mindful eating approach already, I feel that I had some good sort of underlying foundations in place to then attempt this challenge. So it wasn't basically like going 0 to 100 straight out of the gate and having to overhaul my whole lifestyle. It was more just little refinements and sort of the consistency of things as well. A few of the different points in this challenge can be interpreted different ways. A good example of that is what someone considers a workout, someone else might not consider a workout. You can imagine that there are a lot of different people starting from a lot of different spots trying this sort of challenge. So for someone, a 45-minute walk and then a 45-minute sort of stretch and yoga session might be a very big test of their physical and sort of mental endurance there. But for someone else, it might have to be 45 minutes of hard running and then 45 minutes of hard lifting, and that's kind of the baseline they set as their workout. So I feel that it's very open-ended in that sense that it's allowed to be malleable and to be molded basically to where you are, so it can fit all people. This is where a few of the sort of other additional points you can add on to the challenge can make it a little bit tougher if you find that the overall sort of 5 points there aren't too challenging and are already incorporated into your daily life. One that I see quite commonly talked about is a 5-minute cold shower daily. Some of the later phases have an additional 45-minute workout, so that'd be 3 45-minute workouts. There's no really wrong way to run this challenge. It's more about pushing yourself and trying to basically up your standards. All right, let's get into the individual points a little more. So touching on the water intake. Being a 6'6", 100 kilo male, I probably drink 3 to 4 liters on a normal day without doing a lot of exercise on top. So that wasn't really a test, that was basically business as usual there. So I didn't find that too bad. Even if it's not a massive leap in terms of increase in your intake there, making you more mindful of how much you are actually drinking on a daily basis is never going to be a negative there. Point number 2, progress photos. This was quite an interesting one. I found this to be more challenging than you'd expect, just sheerly based on the logistics of forgetting to take a photo. I took all my progress photos at night before I'd go to bed. So across this time period, I reckon there have been at least 10 nights where I'd have gotten into bed and gone, shit, I forgot my photo. Jump up, go take it, and then get back into bed. It is also a great visual log that you can see the progress basically doubling down. First week or two, you're probably not going to see many changes. From that point onward, if you are applying yourself to this challenge, if you are giving your all to it, you're going to see changes. Depending on where you're starting from, it'll really adjust the magnitude of what you're seeing, but I found it a very good way to have an actual visual representation of this is what I am working towards, this is what I'm achieving by doing these habits. Number 3, reading. So this is probably the point of the challenge that I actually would have said that I benefit from the most. It's quite an interesting thing. Looking back across the time that I completed the 75 Hard versus probably I would say the 16 to 18 months before that, I read 4 books across my 75 Hard. I probably read 3 books across that previous 18 months there. So in less than 3 months, I read more than I did in the previous 18, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, but it shows you only like 10 pages a day seems like such a trivial amount, but the sheer consistency of it takes you so far. That's something that this challenge has definitely really drilled into me, that those small, unwaveringly consistent steps take you so much further than these big spurs of motivation that kind of peak and fade, peak and fade. Whereas this is just a nice chipping away, slowly moving sort of approach to it. I found that to be quite different to how I would normally undertake my reading in my own personal life without a challenge like this being held at the same time. I would say that that was probably the point that I benefited from the most, both in a achievement perspective of how much I read, what I read, and how much I got out of that, but also from a habit standpoint of seeing like what I can actually achieve if I hold myself to that standard of every day I'm reading, every day I'm reading. All right, now to the points that I'm sure everyone wants to hear a little more about. Point number 4, exercise. As you can imagine, this was definitely a test. As much on the mental as the physical side. Across my period, like the different activities I would have undertaken would be weightlifting and strength training, running, stretching, yoga, sort of flexibility work, lacrosse, golf, basketball, soccer. There are days that I might have had an hour lift in the morning and then had a game later that night. Something that I feel I refined over this time period is really trying to get in touch with my body in the sense of knowing how much exertion I can output to still be ready and right the next day. So there are definitely times across this sort of time period where I had days where my workouts were going for a 45-minute walk outdoors and then maybe doing some wall ball for lacrosse or something like that. The sheer consistency of on a day like that where I'm feeling completely beat from having 2 games and a lift in 30 hours, still doing something rather than just sitting inside, maybe doing a little bit of active recovery like a light stretch or something like that, like actually getting out there and really still moving to a substantial degree, definitely has upped my threshold for what I'm able to not so much push through, but be able to handle. Even though I probably didn't do as much like sheer running conditioning as I would have liked going into it, I've come out with all of my baseline levels of ability to handle volume and load as well as intensity definitely raised. Now where I feel that I'm able to handle that sort of stuff a lot more in stride, I would highly recommend that you set yourself some guidelines at the start as to like on a day where I'm feeling trash, these are some good options here. And then the days that I'm feeling really good, like this is where I want to try and really push through here. Setting those sort of different points and categories early will give you the option to not have to think so much on those days. Like bringing some stuff in that you're a little bit more invigorated to do can be the difference of, oh, maybe I won't finish this challenge today. Point number 5, eating. So with the eating diet component of it, I didn't necessarily follow a strict diet per se. I tried to minimize snacking, which was a bit of a weakness to myself. Basically anything that was not really providing me any like micronutrients and was just excessive calories that didn't bring much benefit to my body there. So this was quite an interesting thing. Like I didn't believe that I had a huge amount of weight to lose before it, and I definitely got more comfortable with the feeling of being a little hungrier across this time, realizing that having always been a hard gainer, I've always stacked my plate. Across this period, scaling back a little there, still trying to fuel myself with everything I need to perform. As you can imagine, across this time period, my average exercise sort of minutes per day definitely increased. On the days that I may have not done much previous to the challenge, I had to do at least 90 minutes. On the days that I would have a lacrosse game and have lifted, I'd be doing that anyway. So the average minutes would have definitely gone up. I'll have a little reference to my Whoop or Apple Watch here in terms of the actual minutes and seeing the increase across there. As you can see, it has increased across that time period. In addition to this, trying to fuel myself with enough calories to feel good, feel like I'm able to perform and never have like a decrease in energy, was an interesting nutrition test to cut out that snack. This nutrition point is probably going to be the most variable of all factors here, where everyone is starting from a different level, everyone is coming in with different beliefs, nutritional needs, and current habits. I would say that allowing myself to still focus on the quality of nutrition coming in. So if I was going out for dinner with my girlfriend or something like that, and we would go to have Mexican, like I wouldn't stop myself from having a burrito because there's still good micronutrients provided in that. As long as the macronutrients were within reason, it would fit my overall sort of daily scheme of how much I'm trying to consume there. Evident by the fact that I went from about 105 to 106 kilos, depending on sort of weight fluctuation, down to about a 97 to 98. Clearly losing 6 to 7.5 kilos across that period, cutting out snacking and any sort of extra calories while being a little bit more portion minded, clearly worked. So it comes down to you knowing your body, knowing how much you need to fuel it with, and becoming a little more mindful. Being mindful of what you're putting in your body, how much you're putting in your body, and also what your body needs, what you're required to consume for optimal performance. This here is before and after photo, so one of my first couple days there, and then compared with a photo at the end. And yeah, so that shows you that I would have argued that I didn't have a huge amount, like I definitely wasn't lean, like sort of playing shape before, but then realizing that, oh, I'm actually carrying a lot more body fat than I expected. And it's the sort of thing, if you've never been through a multiple kilo quote unquote transformation like that, you can't really understand the feeling difference of losing that weight. Like, feeling lighter when you walk around is a very hard thing to express and verbalize, but it feels so good. It feels so good. Like, the less stress on your joints while moving, when you go running, you feel a lot more effortless. You feel like you bounce a lot more, being able to jump higher, sprint faster, all of the above without actually having to improve my output. Just basically taking off 2-3 kilo dumbbells from my body. All in all, I strongly recommend anyone that wants to challenge themselves and try and raise their standards for what they accept in their life, but also become more mindful of their habits, both mentally and physically, to attempt this challenge. I would have argued that I was quite fit, quite good with my habits and the like beforehand, but it has definitely given me a new perspective on reading, eating, fueling your body, and just the sheer consistency of habits and how much they can affect your daily life and the results you are achieving on a daily basis by nature of what actions you take. If you decide to give this challenge a shot, I would love to know how you go. Chuck me a comment down below. Let me know if you're gonna give it a crack, what day you're on, how you found it, if you've completed it yourself. As always, keep hungry, keep grinding.